I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the IDF chief says that neither Hamas nor Hezbollah pose a threat at this time. Israeli Culture Minister Miri Regev offers 2 elephants to Turkey for an interesting reason. And a new tour of Jerusalem lets you see the holy city like never before. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. The Chief of Staff of the Israeli Army has encouraging news that despite recent inflammatory statements and bold actions from the enemies of the Jewish state, none of them are likely to launch any major conflicts at this time. That's the message Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot conveyed to the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee during a closed-door meeting at the Knesset. Starting in the north, he says that in spite of this week's barrage of threats from Hezbollah, the Lebanon-based terror group is now demoralized and cash-strapped due to its involvement in the Syrian civil war. In several fiery remarks, Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah vowed to ignore any red lines by attacking Israel's nuclear reactor in Dimona and a large ammonia plant in any future wars. Regarding his assessment of dangers posed by Hamas in the south, the IDF leader says that the Islamist terror group also currently lacks any willingness to launch an offensive against the Jewish state, which is unlikely to be altered even after appointing its radical new leader, Yahya al-Sinwar. The new terror boss is so extreme, he even opposed the 2011 prisoner swap, which freed him from serving a multiple life sentence in Israeli prison. He accuses Hamas of surrendering to Israel's conditions in the deal, which involved the handing over of more than 1,000 Palestinians for just one Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit. Sinwar was added to the U.S. terrorism blacklist in 2013 for having re-embraced a life of violence since being back out on the streets of Gaza. In the wake of the latest round of bomb threats targeting Jewish community centers and organizations, the United States Congress has come together across party lines to demand action in the form of a swift and thorough investigation. In response to the latest wave of bomb threats leveled against Jewish community centers and institutions around the country, over 150 congressmen and women signed a letter calling for a sense of urgency in investigating the matter. The letter demands that the United States Department of Homeland Security, the Attorney General, and the FBI look into the matter immediately and in cooperation with JCC associations and local forces to put an end to the growing trend. Since the start of 2017, 69 bomb threats have been levied against 54 different North American JCCs. 11 of these threats were just earlier this week on Monday. Earlier this morning, the Anti-Defamation League headquarters in New York was targeted. As in the cases with the JCCs, the threat was a hoax, and rather than intimidating, the newest bomb threat has only galvanized their cause. ADL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt said, quote, "This is not the first time that the ADL has been targeted, and it will not deter us in our efforts to combat anti-Semitism and hate against people of all races and religions." The controversial Trump administration policies that restrict the entry of refugees has deeply divided America. According to leading Hartman Institute intellectual Yossi Klein Halevi, the entire American Jewish community opposes these policies due to our immigrant past. On the other hand, he also tells ILTV's Steve Leibowitz that American Jewry should be pleased that Trump has been fulfilling his campaign promises regarding the United Nations and Iran.
And I was very pleased to see that virtually the entire Jewish community came out against Trump's ban of refugees. Not only the usual suspects, the liberal Jewish organizations, but also the Orthodox groups. The Rabbinical Council of America, which represents the modern Orthodox rabbinate. The OU came out strongly against the decision. Even the ultra-Orthodox Agudas Yisrael, came out with some statement that for them was quite daring. And so wall to wall, the American Jewish community stood up for decency, stood up for a pluralistic America, and I was very proud of them.
Well, we are all either first or second or third generation immigrants.
So that's why this hits so deeply. Now, the second way in which I believe the Jewish community needs to relate to the Trump administration is, I'll phrase this carefully, non-adversarial. And that is to recognize that so far, in terms of Israel, in terms of the Middle East, President Trump is fulfilling the promises that he made to the Jewish community in terms of two resets, a reset in the UN and a reset on Iran. Trump seems serious about reversing Obama's disastrous approach to Iran, which regarded Iran as the regional stabilizer, and Trump is returning Iran to its rightful role as the regional enemy.
And largest state sponsor of terrorism.
Yes. And so the Jewish community needs to keep open channels of communication with Trump. It cannot only be in an adversarial relationship on all issues. And this may surprise you, Steve, but for that reason, I think it was unwise for the Jewish community to attack the Trump administration's statement on the Holocaust. Now, that statement troubled me as well. I'm the son of a Holocaust survivor. I get it. I understand why Jews were upset.
For the viewer's sake, leaving out the word Jews in a statement on Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Which is really just better not to make a statement. Nevertheless, I would urge American Jewish organizations to pick their fights wisely. Yes, stand up for pluralistic America. Yes, stand up for your Muslim neighbors. Stand against blocking the rescue of refugees. But then pick up the phone to the administration. Do this quietly. Not everything has to be done through a press release. And if we're going to have a relationship with the Trump administration, and they're going to be around for the next 4 years, and these are crucial 4 years for Israel. In the next 4 years, we have an opportunity to undo the historic damage of the last 8 years of the Obama administration in Syria, in Iran, throughout the Middle East. And so I don't know if the administration is up to the job. I don't know if they're going to be capable of being consistent, but we need to test the possibility of a working relationship with the administration. And so my appeal to the American Jewish community is, again, choose your battles wisely.
Israel is facing a fresh wave of international criticism today over several not-so-fresh issues related to its building policies. The United Nations is upset over a new announcement that several buildings in a West Bank Bedouin village near Jerusalem are going to be demolished based on Israel's determination that they were built illegally. Senior Israeli officials who coordinate government activities in the territories say area residents have been invited to present their cases at a hearing today, but that in the meantime there's been a clampdown on any projects that lack permits. The United Nations is objecting, arguing that it's very difficult for Palestinians to obtain proper authorization, and that the world body's especially concerned that an elementary school is among the dozens of structures designated to be torn down. Meanwhile, Ankara isn't letting its recent rapprochement with Jerusalem get in the way of condemning the building of Jewish homes over the 1967 lines. A Turkish presidential spokesman is denouncing Israel's recently declared plans to build 6,000 new housing units in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, saying that they're illegal and constitute an absolute provocation. Earlier this month, Turkish President Erdogan used those exact same words, while also insisting that cessation of Israeli building in the West Bank is a precondition for lasting peace and stability in the Middle East. The latest round of condemnatory statements join others from the European Union and the Arab League, although Israel has held back on announcing any new projects since being asked to hold off on doing so by U.S. President Donald Trump. Among the proudest achievements in Israeli defense history is the creation of the Iron Dome missile defense system, and it's just reportedly been given an upgrade. According to the Defense Ministry, though the specific upgrades weren't disclosed, Iron Dome was put to a series of tests yesterday and passed. The system targets incoming projectiles, calculates their trajectory, and assesses the danger. It then intelligently shoots down the threats. Since its installation in 2011, Iron Dome has had a near-perfect record, taking out over 90% of its intended targets. During the 2014 war with Gaza, Hamas launched over 4,500 rockets into Israel. Iron Dome chose to destroy 799, missing 64. To supplement the Iron Dome's limitations, a 3-tier system was developed, including David's Sling and the Arrow 3, intended to counter medium to long-range and intercontinental ballistic missiles, respectively. Iron Beam was introduced later to aid in defense against short-range mortar and rocket fire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is continuing his meetings with leaders in Australia today in talks primarily focused on bolstering bilateral trade. The Israeli premier and his Australian counterpart Malcolm Turnbull have so far witnessed the signing of several agreements, including a memorandum of understanding between Qantas Airways and the Jewish state's national El Al carrier. During a ministerial-level meeting, Turnbull outlined commonalities between the two nations and called for an even further strengthening of ties.
Nonetheless, we need to do more together. There is so much scope for cooperation. We have the same values, democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. We're combating the same enemies, terrorism, terrorists that seek to subvert those values and deny us our ability to live in a free society. And we are both committed to the innovation, which we know will drive the productivity, as you said yesterday, to take us out, to keep rising in aspiration, in achievement, in prosperity.
Netanyahu also called for greater interaction between Israel and the Commonwealth in spite of the 7,500-mile distance between them.
And I want to start with something very simple and narrow. Not only technologies, not only cyber cooperation, not only R&D, but actually trade. Our trade is $1 billion. It should be at least double or triple that. And I'd like to encourage Australian and Israeli companies to increase the trade. And if I did the schlep, they should do it too.
Netanyahu is the first Israeli prime minister in history to make the schlep, which is an affectionate Yiddish word meaning a kind of difficult journey, to visit Australia. For many decades, Israel's been doing everything it can to get Turkey to return a precious artifact to the Holy Land that was removed by the Ottoman Empire. So far, to no avail. The latest appeal involves a rather unorthodox offer from an Israeli minister of 2 elephants in exchange for the much sought-after Shiloach or Siloam inscription. Israeli Culture and Sports Minister Miri Regev was videotaped making the proposal at a basketball game in Gaziantep, which is a volatile Turkish town near the Syrian border. She was there as part of a requirement for a minister to escort the team so that armed Israeli security could also come. When the local mayor lamented his zoo is short on elephants, Regev immediately offered to provide 2 of the large mammals in exchange for the 2,700-year-old inscription. The relic is considered one of the most important ancient Hebrew texts in existence because it validates the biblical account in the books of Kings and Chronicles describing how King Hezekiah's tunnel brought water from the pool of Siloam to the city of David. Ottoman rulers hacked it out of a limestone wall near Jerusalem's Old City following its discovery in 1880. It was then taken to Constantinople in present-day Turkey, where it's claimed as state property. In the words of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the inscription provides indisputable evidence etched in stone of the Jewish people's connection to Jerusalem. The video doesn't show how the Turkish mayor responded to Minister Regev's offer, but until now, all appeals for the treasure's return home have been rejected. Have you ever heard of the phrase, "you are what you eat"? Well, while you may or may not literally turn into a bagel or an omelet, there are serious consequences that can result from an unhealthy diet. Well, in collaboration with Johnson & Johnson's Microbiome Institute, the Janssen R&D team, and the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, one Israeli company has created a novel way to tailor the best possible diet for you based on your gut microbiome. Joining now to talk about their incredible innovation is Lihi Siegel, the CEO and co-founder of Day2. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so I guess my first question is, why do some diets work for some and not for others?
Right, so the real answer to that is that until now we've been asking the wrong question. So until now, all the nutrition-related research will talk about what is the best diet for humans. Right? People have a lot of opinions. You think it's low-fat, low-carb, high-fat. But what we really saw in our research was that it is the wrong question to ask. What you really need to ask is, what is the best diet for me or for you? Because people respond very differently to the same food. So you can eat a piece of bread, and I will eat exactly the same piece of bread. but we will have very different responses in our body. And when we're talking responses, we're talking specifically blood sugar levels.
Okay.
And so if you really want to get into a healthier diet, you have to get that diet tailored for you.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. What is a gut microbiome?
Right, so it sounds like
It's very science fiction.
Very science fiction. So the gut microbiome, it's a very young area of research. So about 5 to 7 years ago, the researchers started to heavily study the trillions of bacteria that reside in our digestive system. They're actually all over our bodies, but we're very heavily focused on the gut microbiome.
Okay.
So these are bacteria that play a very important part in health and disease. And due to some advance in the technologies, scientists are now able to sequence the DNA of the gut microbiome and then figure out who they are and start linking them to healthy and disease pathways.
That's incredible. So, okay, so once you find, the DNA of your gut microbiome, what can you then do about it? How does that lead you in any one direction?
Right. So what we are doing, we're based on a scientific research done by the Weizmann Institute, and what they tried to figure out was exactly the link between diets and healthy diets and your tailored, specific, unique gut microbiome, because it's very different from you and me.
Okay.
So they set out this clinical trial, and what they showed was that people react very differently to the same food, and that it all relates into our unique makeup. And our unique makeup is our unique gut microbiome, other clinical parameters. And so what they really were able to do was tailor the diet, so specific foods that you can react to better than others. And it all has to do with balancing your blood sugar levels, which is a very important point.
That's actually, I just wanted to ask about that. It may sound like a silly question, but who should care about blood sugar balance levels?
Balance your blood sugar
right.
levels.
How many people does that really affect?
Right. So the obvious question is, of course, diabetics care. Right, so there's about 10% of the U.S. population is diabetic, and they really need to care about balancing their blood sugar levels. But that's just a small part of the people who care. There are almost 38% of the adults in the U.S. are what we call pre-diabetic, so they're not really sick yet with diabetes, and we're type 2 diabetes, not type 1. They're not really sick yet, but they're well on their way, and if they don't do a very drastic change, they can very well develop the disease of being diabetic. And so that's a very big population who we are addressing and we can bring a lot of value to.
So then what exactly is Day2 doing? What's your solution?
So our solution is really coming online and filling questionnaires. So we ask you about your food preferences, we ask you about your medical history, we ask you, about your lifestyle habits. And then what we do is we FedEx to you a kit, a box. I don't have it with me, but a box, and we ask you to take a stool sample. So the only way to get to your gut microbiome is through a stool sample. And it's really just a small amount, and it's quite easy. And then you take it and you mail it back to us. And then what we do with that is that we sequence it using advanced technologies in our lab. And we then have a profile of all the microbiome in your gut. And we run that through an algorithm, a machine learning algorithm, which is a very scary way to say we're very smart people with with a lot of intelligent software. So we run it through our algorithm, and then what we provide you is an app. It's an app on your mobile, and it's an app in the web, and it provides you a tailored diet. It lets you know which foods and complex meals are good for you and which are not. And when I say good and bad, it means that it helps you balance your blood sugar levels. To my point, healthy people really should care as well, because it's a risk factor for disease, and it also assists in weight loss if you balance your blood sugar levels. So you get a ranking on a score on your food from A+ to C-, and we really score a complex meal. So if you eat pasta with meatballs and pasta with cream sauce, you may get a very different score.
All right.
So you really need to know what to eat.
So my final question in the last little bit of time that we have, where is this available and what does it cost?
So it's available on a pre-order basis in the U.S. And in the next few weeks, it's going to be open on an order basis. So people will start getting their kits, and you can order. And it's going to cost around $2.99.
Wow, that's all right. Well, for all of that work and, for a tailored diet, I think that's amazing. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. A sparkling new mall has just opened its doors in Gaza City, although many local business owners wonder just how many residents will actually be able to take advantage of this shining new symbol of affluence. The Capitol Mall spans 19,000 square feet, showcasing all of the usual shoe stores, clothing, mobile phone, and cosmetic shops. It even has a 3-story bookstore and a food court where hungry shoppers can grab a quick hamburger, pizza, or ice cream. But about 80% of Gaza's 2 million residents live below the poverty line, and unemployment is over 40%. People only have at most about 8 hours of electricity per day, which the new mall is providing with its own generator. Most of the goods are imported since there's not much local industry. The strip's already poor economy took an even greater downturn after Hamas seized it in a bloody 2007 Palestinian civil war. Israel and Egypt then imposed a heavy blockade on what can be brought in to keep weapons and other contraband out. Poverty is further exacerbated by the Islamic terrorist rulers' diversion of international humanitarian aid to instead build tunnels for attack against Israel, which they vow to destroy. While thousands of Gazans have reportedly window shopped at the mall since its grand opening, it's not clear on just how much of the gleaming fares they'll actually be able to purchase. The venture's owners say that when they started building the mall 4 years ago, they'd been hoping the bleak economic situation would have improved far more than it has. If you've ever wondered what it was really like in the Holy Land 2,000 years ago, now's your chance to take a virtual reality tour and find out. As much as you may enjoy an archaeological book or documentary, nothing can beat being able to see ancient Israel for yourself. And now, all modern-day visitors to Jerusalem's Old City have to do to step back into time to see where both biblical temples once stood is slip on a headset and get ready. The Western Wall Heritage Foundation offers a 360-degree virtual experience based on comprehensive historic, archaeological, and religious research, as well as the very latest in Israeli cutting-edge technology.
It's one of the only tourist sites existing with this technology. Okay, the technology of the 3D goggles, as you all know. The visitor takes the glasses, put them on, go back 2,000 years to the temple period, understand why was the temple, what happened at the temple, who came to the temple, what did they do at the temple. He really feels like he's experiencing 2,000 years ago. And then he comes back to the Kotel of today and can understand the connection between the Western Wall, the Kotel of today, and the temple 2,000 years ago.
More than 10 million people visit the Western Wall each year, and the 10-minute virtual tour has been overbooked every day since it was launched last year.
It's a great adventure. You feel as if you stand in the temple. You go back in time. You really see the people. Finally, I think our students, and me myself, I understood exactly how the temple looked like, how people stood in the temple, how the Leviim sang there. You can see, you can feel, you can even smell everything. It's great.
The compound is the most sacred site in Judaism and revered by Jews who call it the Temple Mount.
אין ספק שהכותל המערבי הוא לא קיר אבנים. הוא קיר שמייצג את שריד בית מקדשנו, את מה שאנחנו מאמינים, את המציאות שמשתקפת שהייתה פה. כל חפירה, כל גילוי ארכיאולוגי, הוא לא מגלה פה אבנים, הוא מגלה שורשים.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by the University of Haifa, Hebrew Summer Ulpan, open to everyone. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. The Old City of Jerusalem is now offering tourists a chance to relive the ancient past. So our word today is inspired by all those who take the time to travel the world through time and space, tayar, meaning tourist. Now, tayarim, or tourists, in Israel come from all around the world and in all shapes and sizes. According to the Ministry of Tayarut, or Tourism, Israel even saw a 3% boost in Tayarut last year, and it's no surprise why. There are so many amazing places letayer, or to tour, from the diving and snorkeling in Eilat in the south, to the art markets and gorgeous hilltop views in Tzfat in the north, and all the beauty and history in between. One could easily spend a lifetime exploring the Jewish state, but for those of us who have to work for a living, I guess being a tayar will do. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy with a low of 48 or 9 degrees Celsius. The temperatures are set to rise over the weekend as the high floats in at around 70 degrees or 21 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.71 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.